architecture of a building or the way a building works, you can look at it very much the same way you look at your own body. Everything interacts with everything else. Everything has to be working in order for the whole building to be healthy. That has not been the case in the past.
People of Prospect. This is a little Zoomcast that Prospect Silicon Valley does to highlight interesting people in our ecosystem. And we were really fortunate to get to know Steve Jones and his company S4 Group recently when we were doing a project around emerging technology in small buildings. And we got really excited about S4 because they're doing something really kind of unique in the building space. And so we're really excited to introduce to you Steve Jones of S4. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. How's your morning? So you're in Utah, is that correct?
We are in Ogden, Utah. It's about 40 minutes north of Salt Lake City.
Yeah. How is it there today?
Well, we still have snow in the mountains. My neighbor's roof had some snow on it this morning, but so spring is trying to arrive, but it's not quite here. We
only get rain in the Bay Area, so no snow here. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about what S4 is and what your company does. So I understand from our work with you that you're really providing a building automation layer to, sometimes to buildings that have never had such. And I thought maybe you can tell us a little bit about what S4 is about and what your technology does.
Absolutely. So we focus on the retrofit and upgrade marketplace for building automation systems. And, if you look at the history of building automation, originally it was focused entirely on heating and air conditioning and the control of the airflow for the heating and air conditioning in buildings. The original manufacturers of electronic building automation systems each did their own thing in their own way, i.e. everything was proprietary.
Right.
And the game that they played was get your product into a building while it's being constructed, and you're going to be there for 25 or 30 years until a major upgrade is done to the building. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately, a lot of the manufacturers got greedy, and their maintenance and support fees just kept escalating year after year. And finally, the building owners got tired of that and started rebelling. And part of that was they just dropped their service and support contracts. A lot of the manufacturers got greedy, and their maintenance and support fees just kept escalating year after year. And finally, the building owners got tired of that and started rebelling. And part of that was they just dropped their service and support contracts. The government and industry and academia got together and defined a standard for building automation. That protocol is called BACnet, for Building Automation Control Network. And that's where our product comes in. What we have done is defined a gateway product that integrates into these legacy proprietary building automation systems, discovers everything that is existing in that system, and publishes each device that we find and its associated points and so forth as BACnet IP devices. We emulate BACnet IP devices. What that does for the building owner is it breaks the mold of having them locked into a specific manufacturer. Now they can go to anyone in the industry who supports the BACnet IP protocol, which is virtually everyone, add value to their building without having to rip everything out and replace it.
You don't have to, or let's say the building owner doesn't have to wrestle with the existing BMS if they want to change their lighting system which I just bumped into with my hand. They want to, so if they want to change their lighting system, they don't have to wrestle with your BMS. Or if they want to change their HVAC or make modifications to their HVAC, they don't have to wrestle with the BMS. Your system recognizes all of these as interchangeable, and it allows the building owner then to work with this as an automated smart system.
Very close. What we are actually doing is allowing the building owner to salvage all the legacy field devices that are scattered throughout the building. They're proprietary. We learned how to speak the proprietary language, and so we make them look like their current generation products. That avoids the building owner having to shut down their building, rip everything out, replace it. So it also gives them the freedom now to choose technology from anywhere in the building automation industry to augment what that building does. The one thing that I want to emphasize here is that what we're doing is we're giving the building owner technology that is instrumental in providing a very sophisticated transition plan. Those legacy systems out there are 25 to 30 years old at this point.
Right.
They're way beyond their designed lifespan. And so, in order to be fair to our partners and their customers, I always coach them on, yes, add value to your building very quickly, because we provide the enabling technology to allow you to do that. But be realistic. Understand that at some point in time, you're going to have to bite the bullet and replace those legacy systems, before they die just simply of age.
This does allow building owners to hold on to their legacy systems and get more value out of them before that time finally comes, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm personally really excited about that idea. I see it in a lot of different industries where, these kind of old legacy systems that were founded on a completely different kind of business model for software, number one. And number two, didn't anticipate even a tenth of what we really need to do with buildings today, right? And
Absolutely.
Here you're able to kind of bring them up to at least a functional standard and allow those that asset cost to be kind of avoided for a while until it's really time to make an upgrade, which is huge. I guess I wonder, and I think it's fair to ask you, because you're the founder of S4 and the president of S4, just how big a problem is this in the United States? When you think about the building stock in the US and you think about those 1990 to 2000 vintage buildings that you're talking about, where this, kind of your sweet spot, how many buildings out there are in that space? Just kind of rough numbers in terms of maybe percentage of the building stock.
Around 40% of the existing stock of buildings are these legacy buildings that need some attention. So it's a huge issue out there. It's gotten even more important as building owners are now having to address the issue of, how do I prepare this building to bring occupants back after the COVID pandemic? How am I going to make those people feel like it's safe to be in that building? Right.
So that's going to be a really interesting problem. I'm going to get to that, and I'm going to put a pin in that topic for a moment. Just sticking with kind of the current state of buildings today, just a different kind of question. So you said 40% of billions of square feet of commercial buildings are being run by legacy systems that really could be operating more effectively, more efficiently. They can participate in demand response and other grid services if they had this kind of technology. If they worked with S4, there's so much more value they could gain, right?
Absolutely.
So a huge portion of that billions of square feet of commercial building happen to be little buildings. And it seems, I love, you said something, legacy buildings need love too, right? Yes. Well, a whole lot of those legacy buildings are these little buildings that don't have, the huge budgets that support engineering teams and all this other stuff. And I just wonder how you feel about small buildings as a market when you look at S4. What's your feeling about the small building market and automation?
There are a number of buildings where the only automation that they need is a smart thermostat. Traditional heating and air conditioning unit, maybe a little bit bigger than you would use in a home. For instance, the building that my office is in has 4 units in the building, 2 on the first floor, 2 on the second floor. Each one has a smart thermostat, and that does an adequate job. There's not a whole lot more you could do. The thermostats are Wi-Fi thermostats that connect to a cloud-based service, and that cloud-based service, optimizes the building so that it is very efficient.
That's interesting. So, and I just want to bring in a question that somebody from our audience this morning asked, and I'm going to ask it in actually 2 prongs. One, how does your layer kind of interact with systems like Building IQ and other kind of rating systems that allow an owner to better understand how their building is performing? And maybe could you also focus on technologies like NMEC or MNV 2.0, where it's giving you kind of that Prius effect in terms of building monitoring and giving you kind of real-time feedback on performance? Before,
when we were talking about what does S4 do, I described how S4 works in the context of upgrading the traditional building automation system to newer technology. So you would have an operator workstation for the building automation system. Probably you would have a global controller that would orchestrate everything that's going on in the building and so forth. What we didn't talk about, and you've just kind of alluded to, so I'm going to take that lead, is the S4 box now can act as a on-site agent, if you will, for value-added applications. Part of our business strategy was we really didn't care what that application was. In fact, we consciously stayed away from developing dashboards or energy management applications or analytics applications on our own, because the strategy was we wanted to be application agnostic. We wanted to be able to team with anyone in the industry who is providing applications without competing with them. From the standpoint of once the S4 box is installed in one of these legacy buildings, not only can upgrade the legacy building automation system, the heating and air conditioning control and so forth, but now you can use the same technology and introduce energy management applications to the building, analytics applications, continuous commissioning applications, and so forth. So, and that all comes about because we decided as part of our architecture was we would use the BACnet protocol as a way of, if you will, normalizing the data in the building, so that anyone who needed that data could then have access to it.
That's excellent. So the technology works for one building, but it also works for a portfolio of buildings.
Absolutely.
Cool. So you were, Steve, you mentioned upgrades that are happening all over the place for the reopening of a lot of public spaces, schools, hopefully great restaurants and lots of other meeting spaces and things like that. How do you look at that from the standpoint of your company? If we're talking about needing to upgrade HVAC for children to safely be in school all day or others, where do you see yourself playing in that, and how can you contribute to the reopening?
What I see with that scenario is that opportunities that building owners could look at as being optional, and if they had to cut corners somewhere, they could survive with deferred maintenance on their building automation systems and so forth, in some cases for an extended period of time. If in fact no one was complaining about being too hot or too cool, that was okay. Because of the COVID pandemic and because of the concerns with health and safety and so forth, upgrading those buildings becomes mandatory. In fact, to introduce a new term into this discussion, really getting to the point where building owners have to think in terms of turning my building into a smart building. If you look at let's say the architecture of a building or the way a building works, you can look at it very much the same way you look at your own body. Everything interacts with everything else. Everything has to be working in order for the whole building to be healthy. And that has not been the case in the past. So now things like, is the elevator system working optimally? Is it moving people, where they need to be, when they need to be there, and so forth? The access control security system, one of the big factors with, and this passes into the lighting system also. One of the big factors in both of those systems is occupancy detection. Where are there people in the building? And once you know that, you can make smarter decisions about what has to be turned on, what your set points have to be for heating and cooling, and so on and so forth. Once we expose all that legacy building automations data to BACnet, now all these other value-added applications can come into play.
Yeah, is there any practical limit to the number of smart thermostats that you can handle the building?
No, there really isn't. If there is a limitation, it is really more of a business limitation as related
as many
to
as
the
you can afford.
Yeah, that, and also, if you look at the manufacturer of each of these smart thermostats, they have different policies as far as how many thermostats you can have under one account and so forth. So, you may need to have multiple accounts, but it's a solvable problem.
I guess I want to ask one more wonky question about buildings, and I want to ask a wonky question about Steve. Okay, so I just want to kind of meander through this meadow in maybe a different way. So we've been talking a lot about taking old systems and extending their lifetime and expanding their capabilities and bringing them all into BACnet and being able to interact with them in the way you've been talking about. Okay. And we've talked about how this will work for really big buildings. It can work for small buildings. It can work for a single building. It can work for many buildings. This whole idea of building energy efficiency came out of the field of physics, and it came out of the interest in what people kind of thought was a relatively mundane problem. A building gets kind of put together and screwed together, and then people work in it or live in it, but it's actually a really dynamic, really complicated system. A lot of it came from the idea that these buildings are just naturally inefficient because no one was aware of the consumption that each kind of component play, right? So there was a lot of it was around really reducing the energy, and then we introduced solar, we introduced storage, and it was about making that building net zero. Energy itself is becoming greener. There's here in California there are what we call community choice energy groups, which are kind of regional utilities that are promising to make the actual energy they provide carbon-free. The energy itself is becoming a zero carbon proposition. So what does that do in terms of just managing a building? Are we moving from energy being the enemy to cost being the enemy, or is it about the occupants themselves? How do you see that problem?
I'd state it just a little bit differently. If you look back in time, the building was, if you will, owner-centric. Whatever the owner was concerned about, that's what was taken care of. In most cases, it was cost. How much is it going to cost me to run this building? If the costs are too high, let's take some shortcuts. That's all that they looked at. Okay. The pendulum is swinging, and now buildings are becoming more occupant-centric or people-centric. And especially if you look at, for instance, the real estate investment companies. They own, hundreds of thousands of square feet of property, and a lot of that is sitting vacant right now. Well, it doesn't matter how much they do to save money in operating those buildings. they're not going to survive unless they get occupants back into those buildings. In order to do that, they have to start thinking about what do those occupants need, and they need to be comfortable. They need to feel like they are safe. They need to feel like they're not coming into the office with the office being an incubator for the next strain of the virus and so forth. So, it's more than just temperature control. It is controlling the amount of outside air that flows through the building. It's making sure that the filtration systems are working. It's introducing technology that will clean the air, kill the pathogens, and so forth. So it becomes a balancing act between running the building cost effectively or efficiency, and running the building in a way that it's going to induce occupants to come into the building and stay there. In the past, it might have been run this building as cheaply as I possibly can. Now it's be as economic as you can while still meeting the goals of making it a safe environment.
What I love about building automation is that the kinds of conversations interior designers have about delivering an experience and delivering an environment that's productive and satisfying and rewarding and all of these great kind of emotional terms. It kind of feels to me like building owners have a greater hand in delivering that kind of environment with a technology like yours, because now everything is controllable.
Absolutely. And, I guess if we talk a little bit about the what does S4 bring to the picture? Well, with any new construction, for the most part, the building automation systems are already going to be BACnet. That gives the building owner the opportunity to introduce any value-added application that they need to meet the kind of goals that you just talked about. But that still leaves this 40% of the built environment that is legacy. That can't happen until you introduce a product like the S4 product.
That's great. So I promised a wonky question about Steve.
Okay.
Now, I know you were an executive at Johnson Controls, so you knew a little bit about buildings, before you started this, right? So this may have been kind of your expertise. Who knows, right? But this is a big problem.
It is.
So you don't seem like the kind of guy that kind of goes out on top of the hill and ponders the existence of buildings and what it all means. So I am kind of curious how you approach problems, because you've kind of really brought a lot of clarity to a lot of really complicated stuff just in this conversation. So tell us, how did you approach this problem? What's your philosophy of approaching really big, hairy problems like this?
Listening is number one. Let me talk about how we designed our product. There are a number of products out there that you can look at as protocol converters. They do the basic task of taking one communications protocol and translating them to a different one. In our case, the different one ends up being BACnet. But we didn't do it the way everyone else in the industry does it. We took a step back and we very carefully looked at the entire integration process, not just the protocol conversion portion of it. We ended up using a little more robust computer platform than everyone else uses in the industry, because we were going to ask it to do a lot more. If you look at the process of upgrading a building, there are lots and lots of things that typically would be done manually. Every time that you do a manual step, you introduce the possibility of human error. What we did in the design of the S4 product is we said, let's let that computer do as much as it possibly can do. We automated as much of the integration process and the installation process as was practical. And we stopped short of claiming that it's a plug and play solution, because every building is unique in some way, shape, or form, and every situation is unique. So we automated as much as we possibly could, while still giving the installer the flexibility to customize the solution for a particular building. It's a much different solution than you would typically find out there. And it really is different because we took the time to listen. We took the time to really understand what is the entire problem that's being solved, not just a very small portion of that problem. So, and like any other product, there is a little bit of a learning curve. It's just kind of part of working with computers and networks and so forth. You're always going to have that. And for instance, with the assistance that we've automated in the system, you can go into a legacy building and in about an hour have the S4 product installed and up and running, just simply because of all the things that we automatically take care of for you.
That's excellent. I have so many more questions for you. I wish we had time to talk about how technology like this could put the ESCO industry in the grave. I'd love to talk to you about what happens after all buildings are automated and that's no longer the problem. What's the next big problem? I wish we could talk about that, but we're a little out of time. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to shout out your website, social media, anything else you'd like folks to know about.
We do have a website. We've got all the product descriptions out there. We have lots of success stories and case studies. We have a partner finder, where you can, if you have a potential project, you can find an integration partner that knows the S4 technology and can act as the master systems integrator to bring it all together. We recorded all the training modules that we would have normally done in a 2-day training session, published those on our YouTube channel. Spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, so you can find me out there. Certainly, let's connect when it's wherever and whenever it's appropriate. Very productive environment for business-to-business relationships to be built.
Thank you so much for this. This was a great conversation. You're working on a really important problem. You've got a really important solution, and this was just a really cool time to talk.
I appreciate everything you guys have done, and look forward to speaking to the audience.
Everybody have a great day, and Steve, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, great. Take care.